When I shifted and added the Enneagram to my work, I just started using it everywhere. And it was phenomenal because it didn't matter where the person was. I could meet them where they were, help them understand their type, and it would just open doors. And I taught everywhere you can imagine. I taught in schools, private schools, to church groups, to the Federal Reserve, you name it, nonprofits. I went and then adapted what I did to the group. And I was very happy doing that. I still had the regular consulting. So I just brought it in with every person I met with. And that's how it grew. And then after about 9 years, I'd noticed so many patterns. And I thought, there's so many schools of thought. And each school of thought is missing out on something.
Welcome, everyone, to the Spiritual Forum. I'm so glad you're here, and you know everything I need to say. This is a podcast of hope, inspiration, and awakening. And today we're going to be talking about awakening to ourselves and awakening to how we can find our best selves and our true nature and go through all those layers of ego and all of that to really fully express closer to our divine nature, and that is through the teachings of the Enneagram. My guest today is Katherine Chernick Fauvre, and she is an internationally recognized personality expert, author, teacher, trainer, coach, and researcher. She's the creator of the Enneagram Tritype and Instinctual stackings. In addition, Katherine's an International Enneagram Association accredited teacher with distinction and was named Enneagram Coach of the Year for 2023 and Empowered Woman of the Year for 2024. She's triple certified with Palmer Daniels, Riso Hudson, and Hurley Dobson, and is distinguished as the only person to have attended intensives with Claudio Naranjo and Oscar Ichazo. And if you know nothing about the Enneagram, I just named all of the big names in Enneagram, and Katherine's been through it all and risen to just being an amazing teacher. And I would say, on top of all of that, she's my teacher. And she's the one who, through all of that, I've read all those other people's books and everything, followed their stuff. But Katherine is the person that I always tell people, if you want to learn about the Enneagram, you've got to go to Katherine Fauvre. So welcome, Katherine.
Wow, welcome. I'm happy to be here. I remember when I first met you.
No, I'm so excited to have you on. We did a week-long session in California. I've also taken some of your online classes, and I've got all your books, and I've got some of your recordings. And sometimes when I'm just traveling across the country, I listen to you. So just to get a review. So I have been a student of the Enneagram since the mid-90s, actually. It's a long time. And I was just doing stuff on my own. I never did all the certification stuff like you did. But it was something that when I found it, I was just amazed at how it really helps me understand people, understand myself, but also really understand people. And I don't know how we're going to go through this hour because I know, like your introduction to Enneagram, I know is like 9 hours long. So we're going to give people an idea of the Enneagram, how they can use it, and all in this hour and 50 minutes, however long we're together. And why don't I just let you start?
Well, personally, I felt very much like you. I had actually loved typologies my whole life. My dad wanted his kids to have critical thinking, and so we could use any book we wanted. And I was like 7 years old. I go, well, can I use a comic book? And he said, yeah, but you have to be able to see the pros and cons and whatever. So I very quickly noticed that there were little books at the cash register on every type of system. Even if you just wanted to teach your cat how to, no bad kitties was the name of one of them. But these little Dell books, and there were a lot of them on personality. And I thought, wow, I wanted to understand people because it didn't make sense to me. Like, why people just tell the truth? Of course, the Enneagram wasn't in my possession at that time. That was the 60s. But I pretty quickly just carried on and learned everything I could. And when I was a manager in business and had to hire, train, and develop people all over the country, I just carried on with the typology. So anything you probably have come across, I studied, which is why I ended up being a personality expert. But once I found the Enneagram, it was the one system that could hold all the others. So when I had Myers-Briggs and I tried to add the Enneagram types, it would lead to dead ends. Whereas if I started with the Enneagram and added the Myers-Briggs types, it didn't. It explained those nuances. And as I was researching and working with clients, because I'd already done research when I was this manager, I had like 1,000 people under me in different levels where I just needed to know them quickly, effectively, and be able to know what was needed where and what personality was going to work where. So I pretty much decided I've got to find out what people think in a normal kind of baseline level. So I worked in department stores at every level with every division. I was either handling problems with orders that weren't being passed. So I was working with divisional managers, or I was teaching the staff personal empowerment. Like the buyer would say, wait, Katherine, how does personal empowerment have to do with being able to sell products? They have to know themselves. And if they're self-possessed, of course, I didn't know I was in 8 yet. Everyone needs to be self-possessed. And she goes, okay, the numbers show it. So she kind of let me I taught them everything. Myers-Briggs, color theory, any system I found, I would teach at whatever level I was in. And as a result, I just carried on in the companies that I worked for, paid for all my trainings, and it was a passion for me. So it was a nice blending of the two. But when I found the Enneagram, I was working for myself, using all those skills for the public sector, for people that wanted to be able to handle being interviewed by an attorney. Let's say they worked for HR and they were going to be what they called interrogated. I'd be hired to help them feel confident in what they could say or do. And by then, knowing the Enneagram was phenomenal. I also did jury selection. I could just tell who was going to be in charge. And for me, I loved all of it. But what I liked working with the most were people and their own transformation. And I decided, I don't know. I don't want to end up in some way on the dark side of manipulation. So I dropped doing things that felt that way to me. Because the higher you go, you can encounter more things that are difficult to overcome. And I just could do it, but I decided I don't want to do it. I'd rather work with people that really want to grow and change. And so when I shifted and added the Enneagram to my work, I just started using it everywhere. And it was phenomenal because it didn't matter where the person was. I could meet them where they were, help them understand their type, and it would just open doors. And I taught everywhere you can imagine. I taught in schools, private schools, to church groups, to the Federal Reserve, you name it, nonprofits. I went and then adapted what I did to the group. And I was very happy doing that. I still had the regular consulting. So I just brought it in with every person I met with. And that's how it grew. And then after about 9 years, I'd noticed so many patterns. And I thought, there's so many schools of thought. And each school of thought is missing out on something. And you would understand that having 7 in the Tritype, as do I, and I wanted to pull it all together. But I thought, well, I really should just do research like I did before on the idealized image and core fears of people. And that was in the fashion industry that I recognized that. And those clusters with 1,000 people matched the Enneagram core fears and desires. But rather than a single fear or a single desire, it was a cluster. And it matched so perfectly that when the first Enneagram conference occurred in 1994. It wasn't the IEA yet. I thought this is a great opportunity to have people from all schools of thought participate in this research. And at that time, I was just had my questionnaire, and then I had my little tests set up all visually. And you've seen them, you know them. It's in the test that you can purchase online as well. But it was amazing to say, okay, most people don't know subtypes. If they were in this school with this line, they had the misinformation on integration disintegration and didn't know it, that it was misquoted and I needed to be corrected. So I thought, I've got to just see what happens. And I carried on. And now I initially I had like 1,200 after I combined the people that I knew with the people that came to the first conference. And from there, I was teaching to the public, but I was saying, well, you know, I really want to understand these views better. And that's when I certified with the 3 schools that were available at that time: Helen Palmer, David Daniels, John Riso, Russ Hudson, Kathy Burley, and Ted, who became Theodore Johnson. And that was really enriching. But then, as I said, then what came up for me is, wait, you don't know about the way Hurley and Donson have developed the centers. Oh, you don't know the way Helen Palmer works with the panels. And so I just wanted to put it all together. And then I had the good fortune of Naranjo teaching again. He'd been out of circulation teaching the Enneagram for about 24 years, just shy of 24 years. And I got in, and it was phenomenal because he was the creator of subtypes. And my research validated that all threads led to him, that he was the seminal originator of that perspective, which people thought it was a Chazo. And so he had heard about my research, so he wanted to read it. And I gave it to him the first day of the intensive, like a 10-day intensive. He read it that night. And the next day he said that he wanted to teach it and would I share my findings and we could teach that part together. I thought, what? But what it was is that he had understood some of the 27 archetypes, but he didn't have like the characters for all 27 at a level that a 5 is satisfied with. He just said, oh no, I'll have to do many more years of research, but you've already done this qualitative research and this is the hard part. And you filled in the blanks of what I don't know. And he asked me if I would put his views into my book, update my book, next time I updated it, which I did a month later. And I said, sure. And so he validated my research, which was really good to know that I was on track, that the people, the public had the best data for us, and that no one had ever asked the community. So that's why I'm here today. But in that same research, I discovered stackings, that everything has to be stacked in a hierarchical order. Doesn't matter whether it's your types and your tritype or your instincts, everything needs to be greater and lesser, and then find your top. And you still need your core for each one. You need your core type. But the most influential piece was tritype, and I called it 3 types initially.
Before you get into that, because I know there's a lot of people who are listening who probably don't know very much about the Enneagram at all. So we're talking about stackings, and we're talking about instinctual stackings, subtypes, sorry, I couldn't find the word. And we're talking about numbers there, but my audience may not know much about the Enneagram at all. So why don't we give a little bit of a background so that they can kind of catch up to what we're talking about? Because it is different from Myers-Briggs, and it's different from the colors and all that kind of stuff. And it's really about primal like motivations, right? And core fears. So can you share a little bit, give us a little generalization about the Enneagram?
It's a 9-point personality system. And those 9 points are broken into 3 categories, which we call centers or triads. And the 2, 3, and 4 group together, and those types make their decisions based on emotional concerns and evaluations. And their fear is of shame. and not being enough. And the 5, 6, and 7 are mental types. That triad is focused on what they need to know or learn to be safe in the world. 2, 3, and 4, they have to create an image that is desirable to feel safe in the world. And 5, 6, and 7 focus on the information they need and who is safe and unsafe. And then the 8, 9, and 1 at the top of the Enneagram are the visceral types. We could turn the Enneagram upside down too to make it match the body, but it doesn't matter because the Enneagram begins and ends with type 9. And type 9 is this all kind of accepting individual that believes in, going along to get along, everyone be happy, everyone participate. Oh, it's not going well, then it'll either work itself out or it needs to be avoided. And yet when the 9 does work, not only are they still that accepting, wonderful person, but they can take an action and not feel that they'll be separate from others. So there's a fear with each one, but that's the beginning. But out of type 9 comes type 1. People often say, well, why does it start? And then the way, we could probably put the numbers anywhere, but it's the point being that the first movement out of 9 is type 1. It's like the first urge, the first light, the first awareness that something needs to be done and needs improvement. And so in the case of the 1, the focus is on getting it right, being thorough, being methodical, being able to hold your own. And even if there's pressure from the outside, you're still going to want to try and do what's right. And underneath that is a fear of being fundamentally wrong, of missing the mark, of making an error that feels fundamentally kind of destructive. Like if you don't have it right, then who are you? So morals matter, evaluations of critiquing everything in their life from the standpoint of improvement. The 2 then is the second place. And after there's kind of the energy of the father and what's right and what does society need, then the 2 comes in and it's like, what nurturing needs to happen? What needs to be cultivated? So 2 holds the place of nurturing others and goodwill. And they're very invitational, they're gracious, they see what's needed, and then they step in to make a difference. And on the high side, they're phenomenal when there's a crisis, and they come in and know what to do and how to do it. But when they struggle, then instead of being too critical like the 1 or too complacent like the 9, they are trying to orchestrate things and manipulate things. Now, good ambassadors do kindly manipulate to make everyone happy. But when a 2 is struggling, they need that validation. They need to be appreciated. So they try to find ways to get that good feeling. And then they can start kind of controlling things in a way. Now, all 9 types control according to the center in which they reside. But the 2 is that goodwill person. But they want freedom. They want to be able to say, yeah, I know you better than you know yourself. And a lot of times they do. And so they're usually very generous people. And then the 3 is the move like, 1, the father, 2, the mother, 3 is the firstborn child. How do you stand out? How do you take those skills and what you learned from your parents and produce something? And so just like when we're about 3 years old and we're saying, mommy, look at me, daddy, see what I can do. That part of us is really point 3. And 3s can produce more than any person you've ever met, or people with 3 in the tritype. So you can have 3 types, 1 from each of those triads. So the 3 is saying, what needs to be done? How can I do it in a way that will be really stellar, where I will be acknowledged for my hard work? So they're taskmasters, they're very efficient. So they're not making a decision based on morals, although they can. But 1 and 3 can look alike, but the 1 is looking at society and improving the environment. And 3s are looking at self-improvement, being their personal best. And they're willing to work really, really hard to do that. And so they're very industrious, but they also can show you their best side. So that's why the peacock is used, because they can look. Yeah, like I worked with a football player, and he wanted to be a really great athlete, but he wanted to look good running. It wasn't enough just to be really good. He had to look good.
Yeah, yeah.
And I understand that, but it's innate. These are innate within us. Now, our personality experiences in life can impact our identifications. But you're right, the Enneagram is based on motivations, these deeper defense strategies. We have these idealized images and corresponding core fears that really need to be protected by defense strategies. But if that defense strategy is like in overdrive, then it doesn't help us. But
so like our I just want to be clear, our personality then is kind of like it's our way of defending against that fear.
Yes, the defense strategies.
Yeah.
So what Naranjo did as a psychiatrist is he developed the emotional component, the psychological component of Ichazo's focus on what we need to do spiritually to be more self-aware and more in union with the divine. So he was on the same journey, but as a psychiatrist, he could take all his research, or that he'd learned actually, but he was a part of the kind of the vanguards of the 60s that were doing research on personality. He was at Ohio State, which was the center, and at a time in history when it became important to understand that all social problems have psychological components. And prior to the 60s, that just was not understood at all. So when Ichazo and Naranjo met, it was a wonderful blend of two worlds, because they appreciated each other's world. And then when it came together, the system could be used to feel better as a human being, even if you weren't going to pursue a spiritual path. But initially, it was a spiritual path. And therein lies some problems, though. If people don't go a little deeper, they're not going to get as many benefits. But you can go as deep as you want, or as shallow. I'm 40 years in January, 40 years I've been teaching the Enneagram, and I'm not bored. And I understand more and more and more about human nature and people. And the key thing about the Enneagram, and I'll return to the types, but the main thing, if you understand the Enneagram, is that you can forgive yourself and others. You don't personalize people just doing their thing.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So if
my whole life has been that way since I've learned the Enneagram. It's like, oh my gosh, you see this person acting up in this way that just drives me crazy. And it's like, and then when I realize, oh, well, they're just a 4 and they're doing what 4s do. And then suddenly it's like I completely back off and give them permission to just act the way the 4s do.
And focus on what they focus on. Because as an 8, I would think, wait, this is so simple. But it wasn't simple to the emotional types that led with a heart type, or the 6s that would be there's an inconsistency here. This doesn't feel right. I'm uncertain. And I think, well, just choose one. And if it doesn't work, do the opposite.
Choose the other.
That is not the mindset of others. And when I learned other mindsets, like little versions of personality, I thought, oh, okay. But they didn't go to that core fear and that the corresponding higher value. either. So the Enneagram could show us both, actually 3 levels. It could show us the primitive way we react, which would be our subtypes, and it can show us our ego types at the kind of personality level, the ego level, and it can show us our essential qualities, which is the higher level. So anything that's 3-dimensional is extraordinary. And when I teach the types, I like to include all 3. In fact, I did a 28-week course just so I could spend 2 hours on each type, why they do what they do, and kind of unpack the research. And people wanted it so much, but they didn't want to buy the whole course. So last year I broke it up into 27 videos. So people could buy their own Tritype. They could know just what they wanted to know about themselves. And it was really a good thing. I should have done that all along, broken things out by type for just the people who wanted their own information. But back to segue from my kind of going back out and in again, but you mentioned the 4. So the 4 is the second born child, and it's the point of individuation. The 4 doesn't need to be stellar, although they want to be, but they have to be stellar in a unique, one-of-a-kind way. So symbolically, they're in search of what is a one-of-a-kind that's really refined with their own sense of aesthetics. They want to put their personal trademark on everything. And they're a heart type, so they make their decisions based on emotional attunement to things, but they're like an introverted heart type. And so they're not as comfortable moving towards people and being welcoming like the 2, or kind of the universal brand and proficient like the 3. They're going to create the new. They're going to go through the painstaking. Well, what they're going to do, let me say it more clearly, is they're going to take their emotions and it's actually work with their negative emotions. They're the most naturally self-aware, very young, and they focus on everything in here. And you're a 7, I'm an 8. We look out first, and then it comes back here. Well, they start here and then move out. So when they're healthy, they're seeing humanity instantly. When they're unhealthy, they're kind of self-absorbed because they're thinking about what they're thinking or feeling. Now, because they're studying humanity and they have a sensitivity to suffering, they're making an assumption that everyone has the same feelings they do. And that is important for them to learn that, no, we don't. We have a different kind of lens of perception. And they really get pretty darn close as to what people are potentially feeling, but it's based on what they would feel. I remember Forrest saying to me, well, if I said that, I would mean this. I said, that's not what I mean when I say it. And they go, oh, because they really have thought so deeply about what they feel and felt that they were the baseline of what everyone feels because they're human beings. And they're very identified with the human condition and the suffering in the human condition. Mm-hmm. And the flip side of that is they're identified with being in search of the origins of the divine, of that, the beauty of truly being in union with the essential part of themselves. But their personality gets caught in mimics. So each type does that in their own way. And in the case of the 4 is that they are searching for this unique perspective and they find extraordinary things. But the other side of it is that if someone finds the same thing, it would be like someone wearing the same outfit. They can never like that thing again. It's too unnerving. It's too uncomfortable because they had their identity tied to this cultivated image that's focused on authenticity. So we're all very complex. And the move out of this, let's go to the production of the 3. Now, let's say the 1 said, we need food. And the one noticed these seeds that could become trees. Well, we should plant these trees. So the two was saying, hey, we'll make sure there's the right amount of shade, right amount of water. We need to tend to them. We can't just throw the seeds anywhere. And the one says, no, we have to do it methodically. And then the three says, well, why just one tree? We should have an orchard. And then works out the system of how it would be and proficiently having the people that do what, when, where. And then the four is, okay, that's all fine and good, but some of that fruit does not taste good. Let's say it's a fruit tree, a pear tree. And the four said, well, wait, only the trees in the back left corner really taste good. And the only trees that look good and taste good are this section. We need to reproduce these conditions to get beautiful fruit that also tastes good. And a lot of times when we hear that from people, go, oh, isn't that more work? But actually, they're identifying something very specific and exclusive. And, okay, we have to be able to go to the higher branch to get the nicer piece of fruit. And then the 5 comes along, who's the cerebral mental type that is throughout history, they've been the ones to catalog and create these huge reference books or draw pictures of every flower or every insect. It's like it's moved now to the mental center, what you need to know or learn, but they categorize everything. Everything's recorded. Okay, what trees, where, what time of year, what were the conditions? So they bring together all those details, and they're kind of introverted by nature, and they aren't as extroverted and people focused unless there's this other division of some subtype, which is social, but they're just focused on the data. And that's what makes them feel good is, oh, if I record all these things, what have I got? Like one person went all over the internet and collected everything I'd said about Tritype everywhere, which I didn't even have. And he put it on Reddit, and I gave him permission. He was afraid I wouldn't give him permission. I go, people need to see what's out there. It's not all correct. Some of it had been altered by innocence where they just go, oh, well, I'm that Tritype and I'm like this. And so they changed him. They hadn't gotten the right Tritype yet. But it's still, getting things out there is very important. And it takes the 5 often to come in and collect it. He spent months collecting it. And so they're very logical and not always practical because they're so in search of the data that they may not focus on regularly eating or sleeping. That's why they're one of the eccentric types. 5 and 8 in particular can be quite eccentric, doing their own thing in their own way. And 7s can be where you're just in pursuit of what you want. So the 5 says, okay, but you know what? This isn't enough. We need to dry some of this fruit so we have enough in the seasons when we can't find food and the different type of system. But we need someone to guard it and distribute it and make sure they're vigilant about being fair and just. And along comes our 6. And the 6 doesn't create the rules, the 1 does, but the 6 wants fairness for all. And they're focused on what is fair and everyone getting their fair share and looking for authorities that are going to provide that. And so they're the type that's very confusing. They're like enigmas. They're like the mystery wrapped in something and then become the puzzle. I can never remember quite the right way. It's been used in history several times in different ways. Churchill even used it, talking about a problem. But basically, enigma means a puzzle, puzzling. And 6s are puzzling to all of us, but to themselves as well, because they always see the other side of every equation. And so if you present like the symbol of yin and yang, the whole idea is that it's equal amounts of color. And yet I can throw them off and say, well, but what do you do when there has to be a tiny little black line around the whole black-white image, isn't that a little more black? And they go, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Okay, now, and then in the future, they'd want to say, wow, it's not totally even unless it has another color around it. And so, yeah, they can be the devil's advocate, but boy, their strength is that if they believe in something or someone, they're devoted and they're right there with you in a different way from the two. The two will give you their heart. The 6 will give you their kind of support on a mental level. Okay, you look out for me, I'll look out for you. But because they always see the other side of every equation, they can seem disgruntled at times, or they can go, what? Or ask questions, and people think it's like meant to be off-putting, but it isn't. They just, wait a minute, you said this. You said we were going to do this at 2:00, and they're not trying to be kind of disgruntled, but they want to know what they can trust. So the high side is if they've chosen to trust you, they're devoted. But if they feel that that person who in a way has authority over them because they've given them permission to have authority, but if you're unfair, they snatch it back. And this is what's confusing people. Wait, are you like on my side or not on my side? I'm on your side. But when you said that, then, so everything's conditional. And the 6 is meant to notice what is not matching up. So
in the orchard, would the 6 also though be the person who's looking at what could go wrong, like locusts could come, or aren't they also that person?
Yes. So they think that that's the first level of what can go wrong. Well, actually, the 5 sees it at the beginning of the mental center due to the calculations. And then the 5 is saying, okay, these are the conditions that must be met. But the 6 will say, well, wait, but what about there were locusts like 7 years ago? Isn't it every 7 years? And maybe they've got part of the data, but not all of it. And the 5 will try to explain to the 6, well, we have to go with the majority. I mean, yes, locusts could come, but what are the chances? We need more data to say what we need to prepare for. But 6 is the point of preparation. So when the fear arises and they think about possibilities and potentials, because they're ahead tide, so they're in their thinking to solve their problems, they weigh and measure. Everything needs to be evaluated. But if they're on the internet, for example, they have more trouble since the internet arrived because they think they get the right data. But the 5 will say, wait, you got 100 people that said a type is like this description, and you only had 2 descriptions for this one. Well, the people who's only 2 is correct. The 100 is just a duplication. And they go, oh, how do I look for that? Well, see, the 5 will go deeper. The 6 goes with everything they can find, and they go with like more is better. And the 5 says, no, accurate is better. That's why, like with Naranjo validating my research, he was a 5. So he wanted more time before he wrote a book on the subtype. So he wanted me to get his information out there so he'd be represented. But he didn't want to do it yet. And I'll be darned if it didn't take him so I met him in 96, and he didn't come out with his subtype book for another 12 years, 14 years. Or was it 16? Because it came out.
Okay.
Yeah, 2012. So it was longer. And 14 years. But that's the 5. They're going to hesitate. They want the expertise. They want all the knowledge. And when they're head of household or a child, they'll seem like, hey, why aren't you acting on this information? Well, they're not meant to. They're meant to sort through it further and analyze it more. And they, of course, they make their own computer setup and do, they're going to just be miles ahead of us. They are great at researching, like literal researching. A lot of researchers are 5s. They like quantitative better than qualitative, but they do both. Like Naranjo the Five said, I can't believe you did all these years of qualitative research. That takes so much time. And you did 3-hour interviews and you found people didn't know the Enneagram. You did all the right things. But he said he didn't like that because you have to deal with people more. And fives would rather work with the data more.
Yeah.
Something. But of that particular focus, he was exceptionally good because he had the spiritual focus and the desire for data. So he had the logical mind, but he was open-minded because he believed in his relationship to a higher divine quality rather than narrowing it one way or another, which fives can do. They can compartmentalize. So yes, you're right. And the six is saying, wait, you took too much, or yeah, you were here. So they're very judicial that way. A lot of our police officers are this type, and they're trying to go with the rules, but then they break the rules too. Like a seven might come up to them. The seven is kind of, everyone wants to be the friend of a seven because they're playful. They think of great ideas. They're the imagination. And so six is like, has a lot of procrastination because of what can go wrong. And the seven says, oh, well, if that doesn't work, we'll just move over here. We'll just do this. They always have a kind of an unconscious backup. They always have plans that can be other plans. And the six is like, put all their eggs in one basket. They prepared for whatever they're afraid they don't know, which is really good when you have to take a test. But when things come out of nowhere, unplanned, it can throw the six off, where they either like become paralyzed or they avoid, or they may just go into their fear. And that's when it's considered counterphobic. So phobia is what they're dealing with. But that's why they're such an enigma, because wait, what are you? You're questioning, or you're the good person in alignment, or yeah, wait, where are you?
Rebelling.
That rebellion. And that's why they're enigma. And that's why they don't type well, because when they take a test or read anything, they go to the conditions. And that's why they're so good at keeping track of the stock room and the what should go where, when, but they don't get to their motivations, and there's nothing wrong with them. Their whole structure is designed to look at what's happening now. So their projected fears that they tend for are why they're prepared for a lot of things, but they can scare themselves too. In fact, a lot of sixes like to scare themselves with scary movies or mysteries or whatever. Oh, and you can get anything anywhere now. But the seven says, oh yeah, it's fun to be scared, kind of like Steven Spielberg, but yeah, like I'd like it to be something that's not real life, so it doesn't really bother me, or that's not as much fun. Let's just see something magical and let's make it happen. So the six can either be kind of timid. Five is really timid. They're inhibited in a way. The six is like, oh, do I do that? Do I do that? And they might ask a bunch of people to get their view, and then not do what people told them. They just wanted to see what other people think. Where the seven says, oh, let's not even do that. Let's do this. Yeah, why waste our time there? We already know it's not working. Let's just move to what will work. And the seven moves so fast that sometimes people think, oh, no, that can't work. But actually, sevens are really good at this overarching picture, and they're very visionary. So they see a possibility that was not thought out in the five's mind, was not like efficiently organized like a three, not based on rules like the one, or just the kind of the emotional attunement. They're kind of using all of it at once. And by point seven, that is like the law of seven, the unfolding process. So sevens are innately good at the big picture, like Like the 5 has the big picture with the little pieces and how they go together, but it's constrained. With 7, it's as open as the 7 is. And 7s are pretty darn open, comparatively speaking. Where they struggle is like executing all the ideas that they have. They may, depending on the tritype, and so I'll mention that in a minute. I'll finish the types first. But the 7 is like, they're just like the magic maker. They're the entertainer. When they're performers, they are cross-trained. They can do so many things. And whatever they put their attention to, they can do it really well. Whereas the 3 just becomes more and more and more efficient. So like I had 3s come to my trainings, go, oh yeah, Katherine, I come to all your trainings. I already know what you taught, but every training you teach differently. So I know I'll learn something I didn't know. And that's true because I had 7 in one of my 3 types. So I like it open. And what's the energy of the room? Wait, these people understand this part of it. So we're going to go into that. That last group didn't. Who you're teaching to makes a big difference too. And 7s are really good at recognizing it. And
like adapting.
Yeah. Both 3 and 7 adapt, but the 3 is adapting to then be seen in a good light and to become more proficient. 7 is adapting to see other possibilities and go beyond the perfected example because there's more to learn. There's more to explore. So 7's more of an exploration and they get bored doing the same exact thing the same way every day. Now, for those of you who know Myers-Briggs, there are certain types of 7 that are more regimented, and it's often a very nice mix, but innately, the 7's looking at possibilities and a vision that doesn't exist but can. And the hard part for the 7 is finding other people that can see their vision. And that's hard because it can be so future-oriented that if people are more logical and regimented in their thinking, they don't understand that the 7's already seen all that and gone beyond it. But if the 7 has people that work with them that are, like those 1s and 3s that are going to do the system, then they do really well because it's a nice anchor. I even worked with a client where, well, actually several, but one in particular where she was really good. She's a 7, phenomenal flight nurse. That means you go into difficult terrain, you go wherever to rescue people. And she liked it because she didn't get bored. It was always intense. And she also liked that then when they got to the hospital, she could let go of the fear whether the person was going to survive or the hard struggle back. She liked the rescue part. And so she was courted by a lot of hospitals for a higher position. And she said, Katherine, what do I do? I can't do this. I need someone. I said, yeah, they're offering you a lot of money. So you tell them you'll take it, but you need part of your salary to go to someone that's going to do those details that are not you. So then we moved to 8. So after this individuation, the 7 saying, wait, not only did we, take care of the trees and pick the fruit and store it, we should celebrate. We should give meaning at a joyous level for all of us. The 4 is saying we need to have meaning by finding that ideal example of the fruit. And 7 saying, well, and come to think of it, we should have a lot of fruit trees. Maybe they would do better in that other soil, and we'd have variety. So 7s are this optimistic possibility people that need variety, and they synthesize things. They can take something from here, put it together in a new way. But they're like the leader of the head types. So they're like the leader of the social group because they've got the great ideas. And if they're not in charge, they're usually the go-to person for the individual in charge because the 7 always has great ideas. And the 7 can be in charge, but they like having some moving space. They don't like to be too trapped, as you know. And then that is the top of the social hierarchy. So sevens worry about hierarchies. Who's cool, who's uncool. And they're egalitarians. But when someone tries to lord it over the seven, then the seven goes, wait a minute, you're not so great yourself. And so they're equalizers in all ways. And then the 8 is the full adult, full individuation. So the beginning of the individuation that happened at point 4 is complete at point 8. And 8 is like the leader that's willing to go their own way and willing to do it alone. And they'll stand up for their belief. Now, the 8 sees what can go wrong too, like the 6, but they say to the 6, that's just this little area. We need to see what's further away that can come our direction. We need to check our perimeters, not just our storehouse, because there could be marauders or there could be critters. We don't know. So we need to track things further out. And they're so far out. It begins with point 7. So point 6 notices what can go wrong and are preoccupied with that. And 7 see the possibilities. But 8 is saying, okay, this is what we do to shore up our weak areas. And they're so far forward that most people go, oh, that's not a problem. That's kind of like the locust thing. But the 8 will say, yeah, it'll be a big mistake. If we don't do this now, it's a chain reaction. And when it matters, we won't be set up for it. And they kind of become disgruntled. 6 and 8 kind of go, 4, 6, and 8 are 3 types that will show they're disgruntled. And then the 8 will go, whatever, if you don't want to do it, that's your loss. And, they don't need to make sure someone does it. Like the 2 tries to get people to grow in the way that they want, or the 8 just tells the truth as they know it. But what the 8 doesn't know is that their truth is not the truth. But as an 8, I can say this, we believe it. We think we're telling the truth and that it's a universal truth. And there are universal things, absolutely. But we still have a different lens of perception. And it's like our fairness is what we identify as fair. And we'll have a code of honor, a personal code of honor, where we will, deal with hard times because of we believe in what we're saying. But we're like too concrete about it. There needs to be more flexibility. But the 8 is the last type before returning back to the 9, which is the universal type. So with the 8, it's like secretly they'll help anyone that's vulnerable. But people that are creating false vulnerability to get away with things they have no use for. And so people will experience them as incredibly protective and supportive, but rather than being the go-to person, like a 2, they want to teach you how to do it yourself. And if things go sour, they will help, but they don't want that to be their job, because their good feeling does not come from helping people over and over again. It comes from protecting people and teaching them how to protect themselves. That's why before I even knew the Enneagram, teaching those classes on personal empowerment, what was I doing? I was teaching them my core value. And that's what all of us do naturally. We focus on the job or the position or the role where we can naturally do what we want to do. So the 8's like the king warrior archetype, and yet secretly they're very tenderhearted, but they're mentally tough. So it's kind of confusing, and they can be kind of rough. Then just say something without couching it in a nice, safe way. So people go, oh, like 6s with me. If I just said, now listen, I need the reports on the 21st, not the 24th, not the 25th, the 21st. And you need to send it to me on the 20th to get to me on the 21st. That's all good. But I've got to send my report to New York. So I need it. And this one little person, she thought I was saying she wasn't going to get the report in on time, but I wasn't trying to say that. I was trying to spell it out that this is how the system works. But she started crying, and I go, "Oh, what? When? Why are you crying?" "Well, you're mad at me." "No, I'm not mad at you.
You're just being clear.
I'm just being clear, because the 8 does have what can go wrong, experiences. So from experience, I know people wouldn't realize how important it was to get that report to me on whatever day. But because she's a what can go wrong person, she was projecting that I already thought she was going to go wrong.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I go, okay, back up, restart. I don't feel that way. And she goes, "You don't?" I go, "No." And she said, "Well, you're going to be mad later?" "No." I'm telling you right now, I gave you everything in that first explanation, but I thought, oh, I got to go back and understand more about this personality type. And I was thinking, okay, who is this? And they're the enigmas, because they want to do well for you. And if they're afraid they're going to make a mistake, or wait, when's the other shoe going to fall? But with the 8, there is no other shoe.
Yeah.
Tell you right up front what matters. And then the 8 is like between 7 and 9. So the 7 is go, see, do. Okay, let's go new horizons. Hey, Mr. 8, I will look for those perimeters you're talking about while I'm out exploring. And we need the 7s for that. And the 6s say, well, I'll go with you, but it's the counterphobic 6 who's not afraid, or they want to test their mettle. And, the 8 goes, great. I'm going to go with you too, because you don't notice things I notice, but together we'll cover it all. So these types all work wonderfully together when we understand. And then the 9 is like the 8 says, let's just eat the fruit. Okay, we've done the celebrating, we've done all the hard work. When do we get to just eat it? Let's eat it. And so it's making a decision. And by the way, the 7 had a great idea, but the 5's got the conditions. We'll go find some other seeds. Let's try it. And that's because they're between 7, that exploration, and 9, which is digestion. It's synthesizing moved into integration, as opposed to just the idea of it, but the physical experience of it. And every type of these 9 types has something in common with every other type, and something exactly the opposite that kind of is like chalk on a blackboard, where wait, no, are you crying? No, what you crying?
Why are you doing that?
Yeah, exactly. And but when the return to 9 is that kind of integrating and creating a new neutral. So the move to 3, the 3, 6, 9, the primary types, is the move towards initiation, starting anew. And then the move to 6 in the primary triangle is seeing the other side and opposition. Okay, what do we need to consider that's not being said, or we haven't considered? And then the 9 is integration. And then each type has a type before them and after them. And those are the wing types. And they flavor that main type.
Before you get into the wings, can I ask you to really quickly, from a spiritual standpoint, share with people, like, how would we use this to develop ourselves? So it, like the fears or the defenses, because I think once you identify that, then it's like, oh, okay. Now I don't just have to keep acting out my type because that's who I am, but I can actually see that what my core fear is, I avoid pain, or whatever, I need to be liked, whatever it is. And knowing that, I think, is really where the spiritual dimension helps us learn how to evolve into a higher level of ourselves.
Because we can do it psychologically and spiritually at the same time. Because psychologically, it's harder to work on things when you're in pain. But a broken heart is an open heart, and we can let in new information, and we're more willing to go into the areas that are hard for each type. And so, yes, there's a a wound for each type, and we can always find something in childhood to match it. And there's a core fear, and there's an idealized image, and then a defense strategy that comes up and says, wow, we can't have that going on. So if the idealized image is threatened, the core fear comes up and the ego feels like it's going to implode. And here's the thing, it could be a real fear or it could be an imagined fear. The body responds the same. And so we go into defense so quickly that it's hard to kind of interrupt it. But once we know the Enneagram type, then we can say, oh, Katherine, you're afraid they're going to be incompetent. And I go, I'm not afraid because mates are never. And okay, you don't like it when people are incompetent. Yeah, I don't like it when people are incompetent. And then I learned I didn't like it because they weren't thinking enough, in my opinion, about that far-reaching issue or concern. And so I would feel unsafe, but it's totally disowned. But every type has a fear. And every type has a idealized image. So like my idealized image as an 8 is that I'm powerful, self-possessed, and take charge. You know, I am my word. And if someone says to me, oh, wait, you didn't deliver what you said you were going to deliver. What? I mean, I would just, because that's everything. So I hate if anything goes wrong. Even sick, I might still teach a class because that being a person of her word is critical to me. And of course, life teaches you can't be that perfect, but every type has that. So the one that has a desire to perfect, and it gives brilliance to their being, and that's the high side. But if they get caught in the minutia and doing things without connecting to it and just like out of fear, then they're going to make assumptions that aren't really helpful to them or others. But they're by the book, and it's hard for one to see out of the box. Now, there are a lot more things we do now that enables people to do that. But if you think throughout history, not the case. But if we have the one learning how to think out of the box, they grow. But their idealized image is that they know what's moral, they know what's right, they know how one should or shouldn't act. And their core fear comes up that they're fundamentally wrong. And they can even think that they're evil and unacceptable and not worthy of grace. And so that's kind of the low side too, but the high side is they improve. They'll go the route of recovery and improve whatever they were doing where they thought they made a mistake. So they're kind of their own judge and jury. And they grow and change when they realize that flexibility is important. They can be quite rigid, but that's how they get things done.
The core fear, like that sense of I'm wrong, is that conscious or unconscious? Because that can be unconscious, right? Like I never think I'm wrong. I'm always right. But that's compensating for actually this fear of maybe I'm bad or I'm wrong.
And you cannot be that good all of the time. So the one learns at a very young age that it's almost impossible to be good all the time, especially if you know something else is wrong. And if you say that it's wrong, then that's being bad to this other person. It's very stressful. But I do have collages on my website for each Enneagram type that were sent to me by the types. And the ones had so many pictures with wings and angels and hearts. They said heart was their symbol. And when I interviewed them, why? It's because it's the only thing that's perfect. And they didn't mean they were going to wear heart on their clothes. They were talking about the sacred heart. And that is the only thing that is truly perfect. So that you see that in a way, but there was a picture of a plate that had a little girl painted on it with little wings. And when I brought the ones in, because living in the Bay Area, this is where Enneagram Central was. And so when I brought all the ones in and had them look at the collage, just make comments about it, I just recorded all the comments. They went, "Oh, yeah, I know what that feels like." Hold on, what feels like? "Oh, that little girl and how sad she is." I go, "She's sad?" Let me look, because it just looked to me like a little painting of a little girl with little wings.
cherub.
Wait, yeah, not quite a cherub, but like a. And then I looked at her expressions, and they did kind of have a tense quality. So maybe the person posing didn't want to sit there anymore, but all the ones said, "Oh, yeah, I do too. You just can't be that good all the time. Or if you're good for one person, someone else thinks you're bad." And then they talked about this good-bad dynamic, and that it's a no-win. And how do you choose? And when you have to choose something that's unpopular, and that dilemma, what that feels like. And they want to be popular, they want to be likable, but they can't go against the values that they think are higher values, higher standards. And they undertake society's values and then raise the bar so that they won't be criticized. But they'll let themselves be criticized for doing something they believe is right. Now, they don't like it, but they'll do it. They'll stand up to it. And that's really 1 and 8. Whereas 3 is perfectionistic, but it's about the self and the world and being recognized by the world. Whereas the 1 wants to be recognized by their values. And,
So if we take that example, though, Katherine, because I don't know if we're going to have time to go through all of them or not, but if we take that example, let's say I find out I'm a 1. And I feel all this pain of being a 1. I've tried so hard to do the right thing and to have a reputation and all of that. And now I find out I'm a 1, and I understand my core fear. So then what action would I take? Would it be like, oh my gosh, like I really have to give myself a break. I need to love myself. I need to recognize I can't be perfect all the time. And this idea that I am not good or bad or wrong or whatever is really, really driving my life. Is that kind of what you would say people can do?
Yeah. Where the holy ideas come in. Because for 1, the fear is to be fundamentally bad or evil, contemptible, like totally unacceptable. And so they're very, very hard on themselves. So we can tell them to love themselves, but what works better is to go to the high side of 1, even when the 1's not feeling it, to bring it into consciousness, which is serenity. And with serenity, everything's already perfect as it is. You don't need to be the person making it perfect. And that perfection is omnipresent. And if we get stuck in this push-pull of what we should or shouldn't do, nothing changes. We just feel, if I'm a 1, I feel just bad about myself because there's many ways I could fail or be less than ideal. But if we go to the holy qualities of the 3 types in the Tritype, which is, you don't have to know those, but it's kind of easier to do it in the beginning to learn your Tritype and then know your types. But it's going to be the set of values. And so if you remember serenity and that everything is already perfect as it is, then it neutralizes the spiral down or the getting controlling and limiting and this kind of feeling that they will display, or the tight mouth, because they're trying, they feel something, they're angry, it rises, and they want to just say it, but they try to stop it. And in that motion of that energy rising, we can kind of notice people, it's almost like their jaw is dislocated, but what they're ready to say something they shouldn't. And it's in that position and they catch it and they don't say it, but we already know they're really upset. And so then they have to work harder and harder, because how do you stop it rising up? And you can't really stop it, what you can do is embrace it and understand what's underneath it. And that's why the motivations are so important. And we can take really divine concepts and try to control them rather than allow them. And it doesn't mean slacking off. It means returning to this higher state of serenity. And sometimes people won't feel serene, but they'll stop feeling, like self-flagellating and wanting to just
like snap out of it. And okay, I've got to remember the holy idea for my type is one. And so I would love to be able to go through all of them. Could you name just what the holy ideas are for the 9 types? We have serenity for one.
Well, yeah, believe it or not, I've added some too.
Okay.
I added the holy action, but yeah, I can do it faster if I just go to my little charts. I have a million charts. Like it's like, and this was just based on the research too. So I have a chart that lets you see the things that have happened where we get in trouble. But let's do the 9 types so that the one gets caught in that kind of resentment. And it's their mental preoccupation. And so the flip to that is the holy perfection, not like I didn't get it right. And that person got it wrong. We got to improve it, but to let go of it. And then the passion, which is like anger repressed, that part where they're feeling anger or trying to stop it, is to move to serenity. So that's what we're talking about, is the emotional response, the mental response, and the visceral response. And the visceral response is that I must improve. I haven't improved enough. And then the holy action is holy purpose. And not just like doing something, but being connected to what you do. With the 2, it's like, this is the supportive advisor, and their fixation is, well, if I make people feel comfortable, if I say something nice about them, they'll like me, and then everyone will be happy, and I have a role. So they're known for flattery. So that's what they focus on. Okay, she likes this, she needs that, and they develop an image around what they do for others. But the holy idea is not just kind of manipulating things, but the freedom around it. You don't need to control the outcome. If you're coming from a sincere place, then you have room for variables, and you don't need to be the person that gets admiration or appreciation. But most of us want to be appreciated for what we do. And so the holy will or the holy freedom is just allowing that and things to unfold. And then the passion, the emotional response is pride. What I did. Well, I taught her that. Whatever. And we all perhaps pride. In fact, of all the sins, pride was the most difficult to overcome, because we want to feel proud of our children, of our actions, of our achievements, whatever we do. But in the case of the 2, it's like the flip side of that is humility. But it has to be holy humility. It can't be false humility, because that's to doing more and more and more and become overly self-sacrificing. Because if you don't take care of yourself, then how can you really be there for other people? So it's the balance. And then the physical part of the 2 is like, they think, I must show goodness. I must be a good person. I must do good works. And so they're preoccupied with goodness. And yet, at the same time, they can miss the mark because they're not in touch with a higher value, which is holy generosity. Not like running yourself to the ground and being the go-to person, the charitable person, but doing what's called for in the moment, no more, no less. And then it resides within you, and it's available to you and others as needed. But if we put so much of ourselves out, it's hard to pull it back in. That's why I think you should always do the higher side of the issue itself.
Mhm.
Remember, it's always going to be our emotional nature, that's our heart type, our visceral nature, that's our gut type, and our mental nature, which is our head type, and there's one for each. So with the 3, the successful achiever, their fixation is vanity. They want vainglory. They want glory every way they can get it. They want their parent to go, great, jump again. Let me see you dive off that diving board again. You know, that doesn't happen. I remember as a kid saying, well, you just look at him. Can't you look at me jump off now? And my mom might want to talk to somebody else. But for the 3, it's like they need to move to holy hope and holy law, meaning that 3 feels they need to be the doer to make things happen. And what they need to learn is that's already handled. That's divine nature is already unfolding. They don't need to be the doer. And so when they think they have to be the doer, they're in their fixation, they're in their defenses. So really, you can start to learn when you're in defense just by the words alone. And then the high side is this holy hope where you allow it. There's hope. There's always hope. There's always something that will change. The seasons change. Spring will come again. So even in the darkest winter, you know that spring will come again. And surprisingly, 3s are innately meant to share hope. They're the most positive type on the Enneagram. And they're identified with positivity and perfecting and performing. So then on the other side, when they're in their passion, their emotional place where they're not getting enough admiration, they can become self-deceptive. Oh, I'm this wonderful fantasy person in my mind. I'm the best contraster, or I'm the best gardener, I'm the best whatever. And they develop a fantasy self, which is great on some levels. On other levels, it is moving away from reality as it is.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't beat themselves up. Instead, they work themselves to death, trying to be the best self. And so the flip side of that self-deception is like holy truthfulness, a truth that supersedes an individual person or situation, but an expanded truth where there is no fundamental right or wrong in one way, that it's much more fluid and changing, because what's true today might not be true tomorrow. Just think about when there's a catastrophe and we get the details and they say 1,000 people suffered this, oh, that's too bad. And then we check in again and then, no, it's really 3,000. And then they check it again. And so each time we hear that, shifts our emotion. Oh, 4,000 have been rescued. Oh, we feel better. So really, 3 is the position of hope and to allow truth to change. And you work with what you got. You don't make it concrete and you don't say it's gone. You know that it will always, hope springs eternal. And then the conviction, that kind of whole body preoccupation is, I must be the ideal. I must manifest the ideal. I must be the best. If I'm not first, I'm last. Like I remember hearing people saying, what's your fear? And they said second best or second best. Mm-hmm. I'm in the top 10.
Those the Olympic champions. Yeah, they can't stand getting that silver medal.
They're not standing because they worked so hard. They had a vision of themselves being there. So then the flip side of that is holy work, not working for the championship, although that's a good motivation on a human level, but to not have it define them, but to have the achievement of even getting to the Olympics or getting that job or that raise, but looking inside, because when 3s are asked how they feel, they don't know. They really don't. And they might feel angry or frustrated or disappointed, or there might be, a happy moment, but otherwise they don't see those shades of feelings the way other types can. They feel empty. So if they go inside, oh, no, I got to see my performance outside. Other people have to see it for it to be real. And so it's really accepting, work that's like ongoing. You put your effort into it, but you allow it to unfold again. Because 3 is part of the primary triangle. So it's moving, just like the Trinity is the 3 elements too. 3s are pattern used in everything. And then the 4, the romantic individualist, or, it's sometimes called the tragic romantic. Well, their fixation, their mental preoccupation is melancholy. Oh, it was better when I was 10, or it'll be better in the future. Or they can have a split understanding of reality and life in that they never identify with now. Or if something actually happens that they wanted and they worked hard for, they'll feel the success of it. It'll be wonderful. But literally in a minute or less, they're on to the other thing they're not enough in. So when you're identified with nostalgia, but negatively identified, if you don't have it, and you create this world where your perceptions are rare and unique, that separates you from a lot of people. You have to find other people that match that rare and unique. But then there's a competition that's set up when you isolate yourself in that way, and then you're sad for feeling isolated, it's kind of a no-win. So what the 4 has to do is just return to origin. Wait a minute, all is right in the world. All already exists. There is not only this divine plan that the 3 notices, but it's a variation on that plane. And the passion, what happens when the 4 can know that they're headed down that fixated thinking of, well, I've got to be unique in this way, and if I have this candle, and I have this ring, and then I can look at this ring and I can feel like I really have good taste, or I can look at my furniture, but those are all externals. And so the 4 is trying to find internal, and the only way is to go to origin and not the cultivated personality. See, there's a real dichotomy in 4. They want to be raw, authentic, and original. But with that, cultivating that, it becomes sophistry because it's all cultivated. And at first, I kind of shocked them when I go, how much time did you put into cultivate? Oh, I've been working on this aspect of my image since I was 3 years old. So to quickly go through the rest, the envy lets them know they're off. If they can't enjoy another person's success, it's tragic because they miss out on enjoying an aspect of themselves. And so holy equanimity creates balance, and to see, okay, where's the joy that this friend succeeded where I didn't? And okay, there's sadness that I didn't succeed. But if they coexist, they neutralize each other. But if you only have the envy and you're not enough, then you can't enjoy your friends' enjoyment, then you missed out on what they want most, which is that kind of communion of souls. And then the holy virtue, this equanimity, kind of balances, but underneath that is a conviction that's going to rise up and say, well, yeah, people are just like that, or those people are that way, or I have to be this way. And all of us have a conviction. And that's when we have to go into the physical sense and go to a holy action rather than using our mental beliefs or our emotional beliefs, but to our emotional and physical behavior. So think of it as thinking, feeling, and acting again. And so they have to go to holy temperance. That temperance is beauty, and they're in search of the divine through beauty. And temperance is not off kilter. And so they give them something that can't measure. The 5 is the investigative thinker. Their fixation is stinginess. I don't have enough. I got to hold on to what I've got because I could lose it all. Even if I have a castle, it can be like a sand castle and be destroyed by a big wave. Like, look at the tsunami. So they think really global when they go to their fears. But the higher mental capacity is omniscience, holy omniscience, not that you as an individual need to know everything. But when you allow for knowing and inner knowing, then it unfolds again, and you don't get into the, oh, I've got to have this and I got to have that, and no, yeah, or I got to have very little and control it. They have to let go of the control because they're also a rigid type. 1, 3, and 5 are all rigid types. And so their passions are avarice. Maybe it's collecting, or maybe it's holding on to what they have. And then the holy virtue to that avaricious nature is holy non-attachment. In other words, you will have enough. It will be given to you. It exists in the universe, or it exists in the world, however you want to look at it. There's a divine quality that will appear one way or another if you allow it. And then the kind of conviction is, I must know all. And if I don't know all, I'm nothing. And if they're in, I must know, then and people think differently, then they're wrong. And so then the 5 says, well, I have the knowledge. I've done the research. And people say, but what do you feel? Because you get a lot of knowing what you feel. And they feel emotions are just entanglements. And so their growing journey is the holy insight that comes from allowing information from every corner of existence, that everything has meaning and understanding or knowledge available. That 6, the character that can,
The enigma.
yeah, they can be afraid, or they can be heroes. So they're afraid of being a coward. So instead, they try to be a hero, or they don't realize when they've done heroic things, but back them into a corner and they'll do something, coming out fighting. They're quite clever. A lot of the sitcoms have that kind of dichotomy with the 6s. But their emotional issue is a fear of fear itself. So mentally, they have to have faith and just trust that things are as they should be, and that holy faith is not conditional upon other people or structure or money, or it just is within, which is very hard. Whatever it is for the type, it's very hard to achieve. But the virtue is courage. Courage in the face of adversity. And they're really the most courageous type, like firemen, people that will go into dangerous situations to help others, emergency services people. They're often the 6 and the 7. And that physical story kind of action is that they feel like, oh, I got to align with that. Yeah, I need to stay away from them. I need I need to be their friend or in that group. I'm going to avoid all of them. That whole hoodoo alignment is a frustration, but when they allow it and they come from holy action, it's like holy string. It's not, do you have more money? Do you have a stronger body? Do you have more knowledge? Who can you best? Instead, it's, what can I offer? And it's a totally different perspective that you enroll that they can have courageous moments and not. Like a lot of 6s that are angry sometimes think they're 8s, but the difference is the 6 will still have phobias, and the 8 doesn't know they're afraid, so they're not going to have phobias. They might say, yeah, I don't like the bugs that sting, but I'm not afraid of them. It's a different relationship. It's a mental state. And then the 7, kind of the entertaining optimist. The 6 is more that loyal guardian. They're going to be loyal to what they believe in, not everything. And that's why they don't recognize themselves. But the 7 is like, got a plan. What's next? There's just a need to move towards the future. But the holy idea is the holy plan. And the wisdom that comes from allowing the plan to unfold. Not like, I can't stay in that negative emotion. If I have that emotion, I won't be able, got to switch. Ooh, turn it off. Go do that. Distraction. And so the kind of fixated way of being is on an emotional level. Well, the fixated mental is the planning for a better future. And and it could be 5 minutes from now, 5 seconds from now, but the plan is, okay, if this doesn't work, I'm going to go do that. And the kind of the passion of the heart is gluttony. Now, it could be food, it could be the internet, it could be data, it could be some physical adventure. It's different. And there's definitely the mental perspective as well, not just like eating. So gluttony covers having what you want and in a variety and just overdoing it, whatever it is. And so the holy virtue is holy sobriety, like really knowing what sobriety is for you as an individual, because it varies with each person. And then the kind of the conviction is, I must be excited. This isn't exciting. This is boring. I must be stimulated. If I'm not, I will die, basically. But really, if they just go to inspiration and what they can offer others, they're so extraordinary that it neutralizes that the next moment isn't going to be good. I'm going to be disappointed. I'm going to be crushed. I'm going to be suffocated with something that I don't want to feel. And feelings are their kind of Achilles heel. And yet the 7 has to learn to go through it. And then they don't have to run away from it because of pride. But this is more complicated explanations. But with the 8, it's the protective challenger, the fixations vengeance, like, okay, you're not going to help me when I ask you. When you ask me for the same thing, I won't help you. And it could be a week from the time it happened, or it could be a year. But like I remember with my brother once when we were little, and I asked him for something. Oh, no, I can't do that. I want to do that. Okay, you sure about that? Yeah. We were like 7 and 8. And so then like a year later, it was the same exact situation when he asked for my help. And I go, yeah, nope. He goes, why? Are you doing something else? Nope. Then why won't you help me? Well, remember a year ago? So it's like, it can be served cold. It's like the 8 wants you just. But once it's just, it's gone. It's done. Then we don't need to hold it anymore. But it's kind of, you can see it in all ages. But with vengeance, you're not seeing the truth of the moment. Truth of the moment is I wanted to help my brother. I love my brother. But I just had this thing in me that needed to be.
Even at score.
Even at score. And then the emotional excess is like lust for everything that keeps me alive. Like whether it's chocolate donuts or Slurpees or M&Ms. Actually, I shouldn't eat chocolate. That's what I'm coming up with. But it's like, yeah, more is better. Too much is almost enough. And excess gets in my way because I can't eat those things to begin with. I'm going to feel terrible. But I might think, oh, yeah, I don't want to have 7-Eleven. I don't want to pay a double delivery fee. So I'll just get 8 of those Slurpees and freeze them. And I'll put the package of M&Ms or the donuts. And then, of course, I don't have the discipline to only eat like 1 a day. It's like they're sitting there saying, eat me, eat me. So both 7 and 8, 7 gluttony, and then 8 kind of lust for life and excess to be secure. Remember, all these things are to be secure. And if you have a fear of deprivation, which both 7 and 8 do, then you're going to want to have whatever it is you want available. But for the 8, what we've kind of discounted is innocence, the beauty and purity of innocence, because we feel like the one we already feel contaminated. Like we already knew we were the difficult child or the outspoken child because we didn't just go along with the program. We said, wait a minute. But that doesn't go over well with adults. But when we connect with our innocence, instead of seeing it as like a shadow of ourselves that needs to be hidden away and like in a dungeon, and we just allow that innocence within us to be vulnerable and know that we won't die. Now, by the way, 8s will never identify with the word vulnerable. I'm saying it now. The Enneagram uses it, but we don't know we're afraid. So, but we do know we don't want to be weak and pathetic. And we don't want to have an unjust person have power over us. And so but if you switch the language, weak and pathetic, oh yeah, I don't do weak and pathetic. And but we can be weak and pathetic and not know it. That's what I'll say to eights. Lorna, it's a good fairy tale, isn't it? And then they go, what? Are you saying it? I am a fairy tale? I go, yeah, pretty much. But you have to be an 8 to say it to another 8. We have to do everything in our own style for it to work. Then if we're out of integrity with our own type, it's problematic. But once we recognize the innocence, then that's coming from our virtue. And we'll always protect the weak and the vulnerable that are truly weak and vulnerable. And we won't look for any reward or claim. It's like the Black Knight that helped someone and you don't know it. Like Denzel Washington, always the character of it helps. No, yeah, I'm an alcoholic, or yeah, I'm leaving this field, or I'm not doing that. Oh, wait, there's this innocent whatever. And then the whole movie's on how you're going to help the vulnerable. And the message is, I must be powerful. If I'm not powerful, I'm weak and pathetic. And I have to be mentally tough. If I'm not physically tough, I have to have mental toughness, mind over matter, where you can't get me. So even if you have more power than I, you can't get me. And it's just, it's a whole visceral thing. Now, the action we'll go into is trying to be powerful. But what we lose is that subtlety and the beauty that comes from benevolence. And holy benevolence is that generous energy of helping when something or someone needs help doing, but not being on or off. Not, okay, you're weak, you're not weak. I'm weak. No, I'm not. Never mind. Never mind, I'm not weak. I'm just not going to remember it because of denial. And I actually have these all broken out by Tritype too, because once you learn the types, it's really wonderful to see the 3 things working in them. Last but not least, it was the 9, the peaceful mediator, and the holy idea emerges when the 9 is indolent. So they just don't take a stand, they don't choose a side, they don't strive, because they just don't want the conflict. They want things simple, so people will stay comfortable with each other. They're seeking comfort, but to navigate that indolence, they have to go back to holy love. And that is, love is always available. Charity, it's somewhere, somehow, some way, and always within us. We just have to access it. So that there is truth, that we have to be able to love beyond ourselves, to be able to love ourselves, to love others. There's truth. It's like a circle. And then 9 has a fear of being loveless. And that means lovelessness. So not having someone to love you, not being able to love, not feeling love because you shut down. And 9s will come numb to their feelings so that they don't have to feel sadness, but they have a lot of grief. But holy love reminds them that love is eternal. Love is everywhere. Like they'll make movies about it, but it is true. This may be disappointing, but if we look over here, there's a wonderful feeling. And someone can be unbelievably kind with a little gesture. And this is what will touch a 9. And this is what 9s do for others. Just that little thing. They'll see someone that has a little thing that's needed. They're upset and they'll just try to calm them down by doing something. Where the 2 says, oh, I'll get what you need. And that's really nice too. But for the 9, it's just a physical way of being. And if they go back into that and allow for the goodness of life and to feel love, not be numb to it and grumbly, but to allow it in, kind of breaks up their sloth, which is how they can kind of deal with things like not wanting to know something till you're ready to deal with it, not wanting to rock the boat. until you're ready for that boat to capsize. And so now I will teeter with the boat, teeter, and not make a decision. And then suddenly it could be like years, or, let's say client was collecting magazines and then they decided they wanted to get rid of a magazine, and maybe they only could get rid of one, but maybe the next one coming back to the same task, they got rid of the whole pile, which could have been like this tall. And it's just, that's the part of 9 that they're the center of the center, the part of the whole system. They identify with all 9 types because they are the universal type. And sloth is like not willing to suffer the pain and separation by not matching someone. Well, if you match one person, you don't match another. So it's a really tough dynamic. And so the virtue is kind of that holy charity, the holy action that comes from realizing you might be uncomfortable. And comfort isn't just physical, it could be emotional discomfort, and they might want to do something to numb themselves down the way the 7 just wants to distract themselves with something more exciting. Well, the 9 wants to just turn it off because it's like, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil is really about the 9. So they go numb to themselves, and awakening back up and taking that action, that charitable action, is their true nature. So, and love and charity are the same. And so the 3 holds the position of hope, the 6 holds the position of faith and trust, and the 9 holds the position of love and charity. So, and everything else is a variation on those. But I mean, yeah, we just.
That's a spiritual thing, that's a thing. And I know we're going to have to close, but we could talk for hours and hours. I think the key is, I think everyone who's listening, some people may really know the Enneagram, other people, this may be the first time they've heard about and could go to your website and learn more about it. But I think the key is that, there's not a good type and a bad type. There's not better types. You don't want to go, oh gosh, I wish I was this, or that's, dang, I'm not that. And every one of them has core fears, and every one of them has ways that we're compensating. And every one of them has these holy ideas, which are avenues to just expansion. And it was so interesting when you were describing all of those, because one of the things I noticed was when you went to the holy idea, your voice just got so light, and it just felt
thinking about it.
Yeah.
Under that state.
Yeah, we're stuck in all of this stuff that we're compensating and trying to not feel and trying not to do this and do that, and that's all the personality. And then the holy idea is like it's our path to the fullest expression. And it's also like we don't like transcend our type. We don't like become another type as we get higher in development or anything like that. It's not like you leave all of that behind. It's more of yeah, you come from the high side of it. So there's so much in this system. I don't even call it a tool because it's much bigger than that. There's so much in this. And like you said, you've been doing this for 40 years, so 45 years, something like that. And there's still more.
Still more. I mean, I keep adding nuances, because when you learn something at one level, then you go to the next, you go to the next, and you go to the next. And you can see it, but we can add to the system on any level and get enormous information. Like when I go into businesses and there's some disgruntled people that had to be there because their team was there. And I go, well, why should I learn this? I said, tell you what, this is a very easy class. And they say, well, how is it easy? I say, well, because the only thing you need to know is that there are 9 views of reality, all of which are inherently valid. And if you can just see that people that aren't like you, are doing something you don't do, and you do things they don't do, and we need everyone. And then they go, that's all I have to learn. I go, yeah, I will achieve my goal if you walk away knowing that these views of reality are inherent and that we need all types.
Yeah. And together we create this beautiful orchard.
Exactly. Like that whole team, and we finally got to eat
We finally got to eat.
and digest the that fruit.
Yeah. 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 That's a good metaphor.
That's a great metaphor. Do you want to know something funny? When I was asking Naranjo about this, I gave him an example of the fruit tree. Now, he didn't, I was telling him that I used this ninefold process because the 7 wasn't enough, in my opinion. And I had done it with the Enneagram. And he said, "Oh, well, that's the metaphor I use of a fruit tree." So there was an Enneagram of process. I was just asking
Okay.
an Enneagram of process. And this was like in 1996.
Okay.
And, oh, yes, but most people don't realize it. And it was just because of business, taking all those classes where they use everything.
Yeah.
That I have a natural inclination to say, okay, this type does that, but okay, these are all the steps are there.
Yeah. Yeah. It translates to business really well, or any kind of project. So,
Yeah, anything.
yeah. 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 Well, Katherine, thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. And I've been following you for years and years and years, and continue to just, for me, it helps me give grace to people. And
Yes.
and that is so important, to just be able to give grace to other people for being who they are, and also working on myself. And it's also fun to, I mean, I type my cats, my dogs.
Yeah, they're all energies. There's no question. They're different. You know it from kittenhood. Yeah, for sure.
It's really fun. The counterphobic 6, my 3, my 9.
I have a crow that's a counterphobic 6, and his best friend is a squirrel. I mean, it's just, they're so cute. They come to my door, and when it's the summer and that I have the screen, the crow squawks to get my attention. And then while he's talking to me, the squirrel is putting his hand under the screen, trying to get the nuts because they know I keep them right at the door. Now,
Oh, wow.
that doesn't just tell you, about how resilient all creatures are, but the fact
Right.
they were working as a team.
Right.
Rose going,
I love it.
Remember me.
That's great. Okay. All right. So we will have all of your information in the show notes. And I was just delighted that you chose to join me. And this went longer than I've ever done before, but we needed to cover it all. And we haven't even covered it all. So I just invite everybody who's listening to, I hope you're inspired to learn more and to go to, what is your website?
Well, the test is at EnneagramTritypeTest.com, and it's 10 tests in one for $25. But my main website is KatherineFauvre.com.
Yeah.
And you can get to the test from there. I've written a lot. I give away a lot of free information. It's kind of like a magazine website rather than a.
Right. And as you've taught me, that the test is an indicator. It's not saying this is exactly what you are. It's the first step.
The first step. But what I did do is I finally found a programmer, really an engineer that could program what I learned with people, so that the test will let you know if you have anything indicative of 6 or 9, like if you should consider it as one of your types.
Okay. Yeah.
Like 99% have a 6 or 9 when that message comes up. When they don't, they're an unusual combination. And it could be their Myers-Briggs. So it all ends up working out. But I didn't have that with my earlier test because I couldn't find anyone who could program it.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, it was all the patterns, because I actually I give you 3 of each Enneagram type. You stack them in the order that's true for you. And then they're served according to whether they're your first choice, your second choice, and then the third choice I don't use, but it's recorded. You have everything, every step you took along the way is all recorded, and I give away.
Okay.
Because a lot of times people want to compare theirs with others. And
yeah. I just want to let you know, on a personal note, that I lead with 7. I always tell people, as of late anyway, that I want my tombstone, assume I'm buried, I want to say, she was interesting.
Yeah. Well, I did that with my son. He always wanted to be the Braveheart. So we put Braveheart. He died at 25. So
Yeah.
I knew he would want that because he
Yeah.
was with the courage and wanted to come
Yeah.
Braveheart.
6. Yeah. Yeah.
And the way that movie was positioned was like a counterphobic 6. It wasn't like the 8. Probably William Wallace may have been an 8.
Yeah.
But
Right. Yeah.
like a 6. Yeah. Well, I like the movie Gladiator instead.
Yeah. Right.
That's my dilemma. Standing true to my truth, no matter what.
Yeah. 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 That's great. Okay. All right. All right. Thank you, Katherine. And thank you, listeners. I'm so glad that we came here today together to learn and to share and to awaken to who we are. And I now close the Spiritual Forum.